Okay, so get this right. You share a couple articles about haunted places online, and all of a sudden, boom, we're diving headfirst into the world of the paranormal.
Well, I think
I'm not complaining, though.
it's not just about, like, ghosts and ghouls, you know? It's more about these places. They offer us this glimpse into the unknown, this chance to, like, really question what we think we know about reality, you know? And who knows, maybe we'll even uncover some insights into, like, the human psyche along the way.
I love that perspective.
Okay.
Okay, so today we're going to dive into 3 locations, each with its own set of, like, chilling tales. We've got St. Patrick's College in Maynooth, Ireland. Then we'll move on to Kilmainham Jail in Dublin, and finally we'll end up at the abandoned Annie Lytle Public School, also known as the Devil's School, in Jacksonville, Florida.
And it's fascinating the variety we have here, right? A seminary, a prison, a school, totally different settings, different histories, but all these, like, persistent reports of unexplained phenomena.
It's like a buffet of the bizarre.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's start with St. Patrick's College, specifically room number 2. This room has been sealed shut for over a century, untouched since the 1840s.
Wow.
Just picture this, right? A historic seminary training ground for priests since 1795. And right in the middle of it all, you have this one room just shrouded in mystery and tragedy.
Yeah, and it's not just any tragedy. We're talking about a string of unexplained deaths, starting in 1840 with students residing in this room meeting tragic and, like, super unexplained fates.
Yeah, the first documented case is Gene O'Grady, a student who just inexplicably jumps out of a closed window. Witnesses claimed he was, like, compelled by an unseen force, almost as if something pushed him.
And then you have Thomas McGinn, another student found dead in the same room, having seemingly slashed his own throat.
It's terrifying. And tragically, this pattern seemed to repeat with, like, subsequent occupants of the room. And to add to the mystery, right, one survivor even claimed that he was driven to self-harm by a demonic face that he saw in the mirror.
Now, this raises the question, are we dealing with a malevolent entity that's attached to the room itself? Or could there be other factors at play, perhaps psychological or environmental, that might explain these events?
Right, because it's not just about the stories themselves, it's also about understanding the context.
Yeah.
So instead of just saying, oh, it's haunted, let's consider the environment these students were in, right? They were training to be priests living in a seminary, surrounded by religious doctrine and expectations. That kind of pressure cooker atmosphere could definitely impact someone's mental state.
Absolutely. Think about the potential for mass hysteria in a setting like that.
Right.
One tragic event could trigger this ripple effect with fear and suggestion influencing the perceptions of actions of others.
And then you have the college sealing the room, which further adds to the mystery and fuels speculation. Attempts to investigate it only resulted in more stories of overwhelming dread and a compulsion to just flee. Even paranormal investigator Hans Holzer, you know, the guy from the Holzer Files, reported feeling intense fear and unease in that room.
Holzer's account, along with the consistent reports from others, suggests that there might be something more to room number 2 than meets the eye. But whether it's demonic, psychological, or something else entirely, that remains a mystery.
This really makes you think about how our minds can influence our experiences, especially in places with such a heavy history. Speaking of which, let's move on to our next location, Kilmainham Jail, a former prison in Dublin with a dark and brutal past.
Oh yeah, this one's a doozy. Kilmainham Jail operated from 1796 to 1924, and it was known for its, like, notoriously harsh conditions. I mean, just imagine the suffering endured within those walls. Political prisoners, revolutionaries, even common criminals, all subjected to, like, unimaginable hardship. It's no wonder people believe it's haunted by the echoes of those who perished there.
And those echoes seem to have gotten a lot louder during renovations in the 1960s.
Really?
Yeah, we're talking reports from workers of lights switching on and off.
Oh, wow.
Painters being physically attacked by unseen forces. Some were even thrown from rooms and dragged across the courtyard.
That's great.
Visitors, too, have reported, like, whispering voices, slamming doors, sudden chills, and even feeling like physical shoves.
What I find particularly intriguing are the reports of apparitions dressed in period clothing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Witnesses would describe these figures in detail only to learn later that, like, no historical reenactors were present at the time.
So it's like those tragic events are somehow imprinted on the very fabric of the building.
Yeah.
Replay themselves for those who are sensitive enough to perceive them.
That's where the concept of residual energy comes in. It's the idea that intense emotional energy, especially from traumatic events, can leave a trace on a location almost like a recording.
So instead of actual spirits haunting the place, it's more like an energetic echo of the past.
Exactly. Think of it this way. You walk into a room where a heated argument just took place. Even though the people are gone, you can still feel the tension lingering in the air. Now imagine that same principle, but magnified 1,000-fold by years of suffering and death.
Yeah, that makes the reports of sudden chills and feelings of unease a lot more understandable. It's like the very walls are holding on to the pain and anguish experienced there.
And if residual energy is real, then Kilmainham Jail, with its long history of suffering, would be like a beacon for those sensitive to such vibrations.
It's a sobering thought, really. It makes you realize that the past isn't always truly past, especially in places like this. Okay, so we've talked about potential psychological factors at St. Patrick's College and the idea of residual energy at Kilmainham Jail. But our next location adds another layer to the mix: occult practices. The abandoned Annie Little Public School in Jacksonville, Florida is known as the Devil's School, and its history is as disturbing as its nickname suggests.
Yeah, this one is truly creepy. This location presents this chilling blend of tragic events and alleged occult activities. It starts with this horrific furnace explosion in the 1950s, claiming the lives of 2 teachers and several students. But the school's association with death didn't end there. Years later, the former janitor was arrested for murder and cannibalism, with evidence suggesting he was responsible for the disappearance of 2 students.
That's horrific. It's like the school itself became a magnet for tragedy.
And this dark history, combined with the gruesome details of the janitor's crimes, is what attracted occult practitioners to the site. There are claims of dark rituals being performed within the school, further solidifying its reputation as the Devil's School.
So now we have this convergence of tragic deaths, potential residual energy, and the added element of occult practices. It's almost impossible to separate the potential influence of each.
And that makes it incredibly difficult to analyze the reports of paranormal activity at the school. Visitors claim to hear ghostly children running, laughing, and shouting through the halls. Graffiti artists have abandoned projects claiming to be attacked by unseen forces. And tragically, a 17-year-old boy died of a heart attack while exploring the school alone, with the only medical explanation being potential fear-induced cardiac arrest.
It makes you wonder, are the spirits of the murdered students responsible for the haunting? Or do the occult rituals performed there play a role? Or could it be a combination of both?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We have to be careful not to jump to conclusions. While some people believe in the existence of demonic entities, there's also the possibility that the fear and suggestions surrounding the school's reputation are amplifying people's experiences, making them more susceptible to perceiving paranormal activity.
This brings us to an important consideration: the ethics of ghost hunting. Is it wise to intentionally seek out these experiences, especially in a place with such a dark history? Or are some doors best left unopened?
That's a question each individual has to answer for themselves. But I believe it's crucial to approach these matters with respect, caution, and a healthy dose of skepticism. We need to remember that we're dealing with the unknown, and there's always the potential for unintended consequences.
You know, it's fascinating how these locations, each so different, tap into like our primal fears and fascination with the unknown.
Yeah, for sure.
Whether it's the chilling history of room number 2, the palpable sense of suffering at Kilmainham Jail, or the unsettling blend of tragedy and the occult at the Devil's School, they all make us question what we think we know about reality.
And that's what I find so compelling about this topic. It forces us to confront our own mortality, our fears and the very limits of our understanding.
It's like we're peering into this dark room, not knowing what we might find. It's both terrifying and exhilarating at the same time.
Yeah, totally. It's a reminder that the world is a far stranger and more mysterious place than we often give it credit for.
Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to circle back to the idea of residual energy. We talked about it in the context of like traumatic events leaving an imprint on a location. But what if it's not just those intense negative emotions that can linger? What if our own everyday thoughts, emotions, and intentions can also leave a trace on the world around us?
That's a fascinating concept. It suggests that we're not just passive observers of the world, but active participants in shaping its energetic landscape.
And if that's true, it raises some pretty big questions. What kind of energy are we leaving behind? Are we contributing to the darkness, or are we radiating light?
It's a powerful thought to consider. If our thoughts and emotions can truly have a lasting impact, then we have this responsibility to be mindful of the energy we're putting out into the world.
Absolutely. We might not be able to control the events of the past, but we can choose how we respond to them, how we carry them with us, and how we shape the future with our own thoughts, actions, and intentions.
It's a reminder that we're all connected, not just to each other, but to the very fabric of the universe. And the energy we emit ripples outward, influencing not only our own lives, but the lives of those around us and the world as a whole.
So as you go about your day, consider this. What kind of imprint are you leaving on the world? Are you a source of light, or are you adding to the darkness? It's a question worth pondering, and one that might just change the way you see the world and your place in it.
Yeah, perhaps it might even inspire you to be a little more mindful, a little more compassionate, and a little more aware of the unseen forces that connect us all.
We've only scratched the surface of these haunted locations and their mysteries, but we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and given you something to think about. After all, isn't that what makes life so intriguing? The constant exploration, the questioning, the never-ending search for answers?